All right, so I wanted to talk about how to get a good jazz tone, or at least what I term a good jazz tone. And I started with this guitar because you don't need this guitar to get a good jazz tone. That's kind of like what the big misconception is of getting a good jazz tone is that you have to play uh, ES 175, plug it through a polytone, and have 30 years worth of experience, and an inner and channel your inner Wes Montgomery or Joe Pass. The reality of it is that you can achieve a really good jazz tone on a budget or without all of the high-end gear that you sometimes see even on this channel. So the things that I want to talk about is first of all, the location of where you're picking is very, very important. So that's one way to get a good jazz tone. The closer you pick to the neck, the warmer that tone's going to be. So that's one thing. Any guitar that you own, that I try to pick right in between here. So in this case, you've got this little spot in between the neck pickup and the actual what do you call it, the neck itself. So the closer I pick to the neck, the warmer of a tone I'm going to get. So that's number one. Another thing is string gauge. We talked back and forth about that. I think you need at least 10s personally after all the experimentation. And I'm sure there's some great jazz guitarists out there using 8s or 9s. I do know of a couple people who've used 10s that have been really tremendous jazz players and stuff. So it's not about the size. You don't need 12s, 13s, or 14s, or even 15s. I think George Benson, some people went that high. But I think that at least you need at least 10s. You don't need flat wounds. That's another one too. That's a misconception. There are flat wounds. These are Tomasics on this, but you don't need that. But I think you need at least 10s. I like that if I'm playing on something that's not flat wounds, I still like a wound G. That's just personal preference and stuff. So another thing is whether or not to play anything but the neck position pickup. So I don't know. I kind of it's a toss up for me. I'm still 95, if not 99% neck pickup. I don't usually put it in between for neck and bridge pickup, and rarely really do I even do bridge pickup, although once in a while. But you got guys like Schofield, that's the signature sound. They sound great off of bridge position pickups and things of that nature. So really depends upon the tone that you're going for. So again, the string gauge is important. The location of your right hand picking technique. Let's talk a little bit about that's important. Let's talk a little bit about your left hand and the right hand too. You have to almost float on the notes when you play jazz guitar. By that I mean, let me play a line for you. It goes. So I'm trying to pick very lightly, but I'm not gonna. Okay, that's much harsher. Where you get a little bit more fatness and roundness of the tone. So that's another thing about that. So light picking, or basically not being too heavy-handed on your right hand and the left hand touch, that's going to improve your tone. Another trick that I learned, or I don't know where I picked this up or something, it's basically I never have my volume button all the way up. The reason being, whenever you have your volume button all the way up, you get too much treble. So I dial it back. Any amp that I'm using, I dial it back till about 7. Anywhere between 6 to 8, but usually around 7, like that. So that's one thing. So that kind of smooths it out, and even more so in solid bodies, I tend to do that. So I'll never have the thing all the way out. And people talk about the tone. They need to be careful with rolling back the tone too much back. You might not be able to cut through the mix, and you might end up with a lot of mud. But I tend to cut the tone back probably about 7, about the same way I cut the volume back a little bit, like that. So let's recap. It sounds like a lot. One, getting a good jazz tone for me is the right hand picking close to the neck. String gauge is important, 10 or higher. Your choice if you want to use flat wands or not. Another thing that affects your good jazz tone is your touch. You don't want to choke too much on the strings on the right or left hand. It's going to sound too harsh, okay? So that's the other thing. Let's talk about amp settings. That would be all over the map. There are some amps that you can buy, like Hendricksons and Polytones. They're kind of voice very dark to begin with, and so right off the bat, you plug the stuff in, it's going to sound pretty dark if that's the jazz tone that you're looking for. But anything from Fender's Blues Juniors to Princeton amps, just tube amps work really, really well. I'm going through the Milkman, and it's a great amp. But you don't need a Milkman, you don't need a Princeton, you don't need anything boutique or things of that nature. So, but all right, so let's say you want to see the Telecaster like that. So you got the way this thing sounded. So in this case, different pickup. So this is not my Nash. This is the Fender Road Worn, and this has a single coil pickup, and you can still get a fat tone out of that. So again, I'm rolled back a little bit with the tone and the volume, and okay, so this gets a beautiful, beautiful warm jazz tone. There's nothing crazy about this. There's no funky pickups. This is the pickups that they came with. I think the Tex-Mex pickups in this thing. The strings are not crazy. These are not crazy flat wounds. These are GHS rockers that I have on here, which is sort of like a flat wound, round wound. They're 12s, so they're not 13s, but they're not 10s or 9s or 8s or anything like that. But nice jazz tone out of this thing. And the advantage of using a Tele is that it's very, very natural. It's very easy. It's very easy for me to play. It's almost like a couch guitar from that perspective. So that's that. So you can get the same kind of tone from a Telecaster. Last but not least is this kind of cheating. This is not really a semi-hollow. I probably should use my Gibson ES339. This is actually a hollow body, and I'll tell you why. There's no center block on this Eastman T185MX, and this thing is really the closest thing to an arch top without it being an arch top. But it's not a semi-hollow. It looks like it, but semi-hollow means that there's just center block, and there's no center block in here. But again, same principles at work here. The volume is not all the way up, nor is the tone all the way up. And see, I was picking here. I want to pick up here. Versus okay, and this guitar is actually strong with the Mastic Infel 13's flatline. So this is basically a jazz box. So anyway, so just to recap this long video, if you're trying to get a jazz tone, to me the most important thing is not whether you're playing Gibson ES-175, Telecaster, or a hollow body or semi-hollow body. It's really your technique that you use and little tricks like, one, do not put the volume all the way up. Two, play as close to the fretboard as possible. Three, worry about the gauge of the string. And last but not least, I didn't even talk about this, your pick. Thicker the pick that you use, the fatter your tone's gonna be. That's pretty much. And this video, I'm using a Blue Chip Tad. What is this? Tad 60 I've got on here. But my really pick of choice, and they don't cost 45, 50 bucks like the Blue Chip, is basically D'Andrea 1.5 millimeter picks. You can buy them. They're just great. They're awesome picks and stuff. All right, then. Thank you. Take care. Practice, practice, practice. Bye now.